Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. We're glad to have you with us this week. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Caduceus Medicine, J. Franklin Automotives, and, of course, the good people here at WMUB, Channel 38, Mercer University's TV. We're coming to you in Macon on Cox Cable Channel 112. In the spotlight this week is a young man that's new to our town, been here about 6 months now. But if you hear him preach, you think he's been here forever. And he's in the spotlight because he's doing some great things. He is the pastor of the House of Hope, Macon. And we'll get in a little bit about the origin of the House of Hope, Macon, and who's in charge of it, ultimately who brought it here. But right now, he's in charge, and that's none other than Pastor J.C. Howard.
Thank you.
Welcome to our program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I appreciate it. I'm grateful. I am.
Well, Pastor, I was speaking to the sheriff last week. I interviewed the sheriff, and I was talking about you,
Sure.
and I told him about your youthfulness and your not only in your intellect and your progressive ideas when it comes to young people, and you're going to Morehouse and so forth and so on. And he said he wanted to meet you because I think a young man like you is exactly who. Not saying old people like me can't relate to can't relate to young people.
Absolutely.
But we know that sometimes that there are some barriers that exist between older and young people. So when you approach your ministry as a young man in his early 30s, are you able to? I know Pastor Smith, and we talked about Pastor Smith, or we'll talk about him, the three-generational thing. How does that work with the three-generation preaching at the same time?
It's about, and you have to be intentional. You have to be intentionally intergenerational because you have to remember as a pastor, as somebody who is giving oversight to a community, because churches are communities. You have to be mindful that you have children who are in there listening to you on a Sunday, and you also have the church mother in there. And so how can you take the word and how can you deliver it in a way that's going to really meet people exactly where they are? And that's the aim. The aim is just to meet people where they are and to be conversational in the way that we know they can respond to it. And so it's an intentional effort, though. It's something that you have to be mindful of. But if you're mindful of it, it reaps so much harvest. If you're mindful of trying to make sure that you're reaching the youngest and the oldest in the same forum, it's really reaps a lot of harvest. I really believe that.
Now, you are a graduate of Morehouse College.
I am the Morehouse College.
Proud graduate.
Proud graduate.
But in addition to that, like I said, you're a young man, but you're also working on a PhD, I understand.
Sure. Well, not a PhD. I'm working on a DMin, a doctorate in ministry.
Doctorate in ministry.
Doctorate in ministry. And the DMin, the difference between PhD and DMin is specifically designed for individuals in ministry, specifically pastors in particular, who are looking to do research and they're looking to do doctoral work do work on the doctoral level. But also still able to give time to your congregation and to your parish and wherever have you. And so it's designed in a different way. Most PhD programs, you have to do a residency and you have to be on campus, whereas in the Doctorate of Ministry program there at Emory University at the Candler School of Theology, we're able to still serve our congregations, but also still study in the program. And so pray for me. I'm in my last year. It's been a 4-year program, but it's been going extremely well, and we'll be finishing that up in 2020 of May. May of 2020, rather.
Now, did you do graduate work at Princeton?
I did do graduate work at Princeton.
At Princeton University.
A master's. Yes, sir. I got my master's in divinity. I got my MDiv, Master in Divinity at Princeton University. And so I know you can imagine the stark difference going from an all-black context, an HBCU context at Morehouse College, to just a few months after graduation going to Princeton, New Jersey, which I just put it to you like this: it's not Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, let's talk about House of Hope, because people will know E. Dewey Smith here.
Yes, he's a legend in this city.
If they're more than 10 years old, they would know him. He came here as a young man from Morehouse, took a small congregation, 10, 15 people, built it into a powerhouse, left us, went to Atlanta.
He did.
Of course, has just grown by leaps and bounds there, both himself and his church. But now he decided that he wanted to come back home and plant a church. The House of Hope Atlanta. Now we have a House of Hope Macon.
Yes,
and he has tapped you as the second pastor.
Yes,
we had Reginald Sharp before.
Yes,
you were the second pastor. How did you What's your relationship with Pastor Smith? Other than when I say your relationship, I know you have a good relationship.
Of course.
But how did you, other than being a Morehouse man, was he looking for a Morehouse man, or were you already a part of the congregation in Atlanta?
Well, you know, once you're a part of the Morehouse community, you realize that you're already amongst the cream of the crop, and so it's easier. It's easier that way. I'm joking, but nevertheless, I was under watch care under Pastor Smith when I was at Morehouse. When I went to Morehouse College, I was actually serving as a youth pastor at a church called Gospel Tabernacle, Bishop Wiley Jackson. But while I was working there, I actually would go over to the 12 o'clock service at GTR, Greater Travelers Rest, now known as the House of Hope, and Dr. Smith was there. He became my watch care pastor when I was 18 or 19 years old while I was away from home, and so we developed that relationship early on. I mean, I was very young when we developed our relationship. He was pastoring Greater Travelers Rest, and to God be the glory, we just stayed connected through all the years. He became my mentor. We talked, we shared. I had one of my family members really assisted in the deal to get the cathedral, and so I was able to kind of get some insight on that. And when I went to Princeton, you know, when I was telling him I was leaving, graduating, I was going to Princeton, he just stayed in touch with me. He stayed on top of, you know, just keeping connected with me, and I could reach out to him anytime. And so we just had a mentor-mentee relationship. It was just very genuine, very organic, and it originated when I was 18 years old, and here we are today at the House of Hope Macon. I didn't see that coming at all. That certainly has been a God move. It was a God shift. I thank God for my brother and my friend, Pastor Reginald Sharp, who was the first pastor of House of Hope Macon. But just to get back to your original thought, Dr. Smith has always loved Macon. He's hometown boy. He's hometown Macon, and he's always loved this city. Of course, his mother was here. She transitioned just a few years ago. God rest her soul. But he's always
and his father's still here.
And his daddy's still here.
My classmate.
His daddy's still pastor.
Eddie
still
Smith
going
Senior,
strong. Yes,
yes,
sir. Dr. Eddie Smith Senior, and he's still going strong. And so his roots are here. And so he just felt the call. He felt the call by God to, I believe in 2014, to return to Macon and to plant a church in this city. And that way he'll always have a connection. It'll always be home, but it's even more than that for him now because he was able to plant a church here. And I'm just grateful for his leadership, and I'm just grateful for his relationship. And I'm grateful for him trusting me, tapping me to come and to be the pastor of that church. And shout out to the House of Hope Macon. I love each and every one of you all. Just a phenomenal church right there on the east side, Shirley Hills area of town, and 1909 Woodland Drive. And so if you're ever in the area or if you're looking for a church home, come check us out. Okay. We have an explosive worship experience, but we're very, very serious about the Word of God.
Yeah, and if you're watching this on Cox Cable Channel 12 or one of the other cable systems in the Middle Georgia area, do know that we'll post this on YouTube, so it'll be all over the world. Certainly. So we want to ask that you subscribe to YouTube, the Middle Georgia Spotlight. Like us, first of all. Subscribe to us. You said that you were 18 and Pastor Smith reached out to you.
Yes.
And which brings me to the question. Here we have a lot of unchurched young people.
Sure.
And we have a lot of young people will say misguided, misdirected, or what have you. Mm-hmm. How do you see the church working hand in hand with the community right down the street from Northeast High School and the east side of town? Mm-hmm. We have some challenges. How can the spirit realm, how can we connect with these children in the spirit realm to get them less likely to do what they are doing, a lot of bad behavior?
To be honest with you, as an individual who has some experience with being a youth pastor, I was a youth pastor when I was in undergrad. I was a youth pastor for several years after I graduated grad school for 3.5 years in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was youth and young adult pastor. So I've been working with young people for a long time, and I have a pulse for young people. The reality is we first need to understand where they're coming from. You can't really try to finesse a situation and try to fix something and you don't know where the fracture is. We have a lot of young people who are suffering, a lot of young people who are actually going through some serious things. And the way that society has expedited and has advanced everything, the way that the information highway is feeding our young people, they can look at anything with just the push of a button right on their phone. They can Google just about anything. Because of the way that everything has been accelerated in that manner culturally, Young people are being exposed to things at a younger age, younger and younger every single year, that some people, even millennials and even people from Generation X, weren't exposed to until high school. They're being exposed to it in elementary school. We're also living in the school shooter generation, where young people are seeing other young people shoot schools up. And it's not something that is unusual anymore. It's become regular. People are becoming numb to it. And so young people are actually experiencing and being exposed to a level of trauma that we've never seen in the history of America. I'm talking about real trauma. Every day, turning on your TV, looking at trauma. What's going on in D.C.? Trauma. What's going on
in Macon,
in Macon, in our own neighborhoods? Trauma. Friends, losing friends to gun violence. That's traumatic. And what are these kids getting? They're getting a hug and go back to class. They're not getting any counseling. They're not getting any grief counseling. And so consequently, we have young people who are experiencing trauma and seeing trauma on a significant level, and nothing is being done to medicate that. Now, to get to your original question about how can the church do that? Well, we can do everything in our powers in regards to opening the doors, in regards to offering some kind of spiritual counseling, spiritual advice, also in offering a safe haven or a place for young people to go, to be able to express themselves and to live and to be safe and to feel safe. But the church, the problem that we're experiencing is that the church has not in many ways done a good job in trying to understand. That's my point. That's where I'm trying to get to. I just taught a class on the spiritual ethos of millennials. Not what they believe. Why do they believe what they believe? Where are they coming from? What experiences are they going through that's lending them to believe what they believe? We need to make a campaign to understand young people. I try to talk to young people on their level and understand what you're going through at 9 years old, at 10 years old, that I may not have gone through until I was 17. That's the kind of society that we're living in, and we need to be intentional about trying to meet young people where they are, understanding where they're coming from. You were talking about it earlier with some of the dire situations our young people are coming from. If a young person is coming from a poverty-stricken home and they're hungry every single day and they develop habits of stealing in order to feed themselves, is the young person wrong for stealing, or are we wrong for letting that young person go hungry?
Very good question. And I agree with you. A few years back, I took exception. There's a senior pastor in this town, and I would mention his name because he said it publicly. Ronald Terry has a church in East Macon. He said that the young people in Macon was heartless, gutless, didn't care, and just all kind of bad things about them because of the crime that they were committed. And I took issue with that. I said, well, but like you said, we don't know what has happened to these children. So I think the question should be asked, not what's wrong with our children, but what happened to our children. So we know a lot of them are not in church. So what can you do? And I've had Pastor Eddie D. Smith Sr. on this program. He said we're suffering from post-traumatic slavery syndrome. I had Pastor Stanley, David Stanley, who has a church in East Macon. I forget the name of his church, but anyway, and he said it's because of the perfect storm that took place. Prayer taken out of the school, households separated, young kids having kids, and all of this, and the internet. He said it was a perfect storm, and that's why we have what we have with our young children. You say what?
Honestly, if you really want me to be candid about the matter, I want to get back to what you said about the pastor who made the comment. It's interesting that we talk about the child, but the child has kin in our congregations. It's interesting that we talk about the child, but the child's grandmother is on my motherboard. We talk about the child, but the child's granddaddy is the deacon. We have young people who their parents and their grandparents, they're sitting in our congregations. And so I want to know where the disconnect is there. It's interesting that we want the church to come in and to put a Band-Aid on the wound. But you have to bring the child to the church, which means if you would have had a Band-Aid at home, you could have applied the Band-Aid there. What are you trying to say, Pastor Howard? I'm trying to get us to understand that charity starts at home. And we have to look at how the home condition is. We can bring them to the house of God. You can bring them to a rec center, to the gym. And so those are just events. We're not there most of the day. It's home and it's school where children are spending the bulk of their time. Home and school. You're bringing your child to the church maybe a couple of times a week, maybe a few times a week if you have some rehearsals. But they go to school every day. They're home every day. If they're not home, they're probably in school. And so consequently, how can we, the church, leave its four walls and minister to that? How can we exercise our vote? How can we exercise our economic power? How can we exercise our legislative power in order to minister to the home condition and to the school condition? Why is it that Northeast, which is a predominantly black and brown school, why is it that they're one of the last schools in order to get the roll down money in order to refinance and to remodel the school? We have to figure out how to fix the epidemic happening at home and at school. And I'm not saying at home. We have some really good parents. There's some great parents in Macon. But we also have
some good single parents, too.
Some great single parents, mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
But we also have some families that are suffering from poverty, who are suffering from economic malnourishment. We have young people who are not. Watch this. I was talking to another pastor about this the other day. Whatever happened to the summer job initiatives? Whatever happened to over the summer when a child got out of school with the city? And I know the city and the county are one now, but with the city, a child can go register with the city and get a great job working for a local business.
That happened when I was in office. For 8 years, I had every summer.
Working with a local business, one of the local businesses in the community, which fosters community development, which fosters relationships, and which fosters us pouring back into us. Now we don't have those kind of opportunities available for young, particularly black and brown children out of that are dealing with economic disparities. And so what do you expect them to do over the summer? What do you expect them to do other than to click up and to party? I'm going to tell you, let's be clear. Young people, we think that young people don't want spirituality, but what they're going through, the ones that are acting out in a manner that we think is unbecoming, they're the ones that are crying out for spirituality. That's what I believe. They're crying out for something. Why? Because what is spirituality? Spirituality is connecting with the divine. What is that? That's community. What is a church? A church is a community of people doing what I just explained. They're looking for community. Why do we click up and gang up? I'm looking for family. I'm looking for community. I'm looking for deeper. Why am I impressed by colors and gang signs and slang? Because it's something deeper. It's something cryptic. That is what faith is. Faith is understanding and trying to get a wrap around that which is mysterious and cryptic. That's a cry for spirituality. When they click up and gang up in these, it's a cry for something deeper. It's a yell for something more significant. And if we can move out of the church and stop expecting them to come to the church, it's 2019. Okay, I can watch church on Facebook, Doc. Dr. Ellis, I can watch church on Facebook. I can watch church anywhere I am in America. I can log on my phone and watch some church. I have to, as a pastor, and I'm a millennial pastor. As a millennial pastor, I am making a declaration that we have to reimagine the way that we do ministry. We have to reimagine the way that we reach the lost, the lost, the least, the lost, and the left out. We can't think that we can hit the corners with tracks and we're going to be able to reach the same people that we reached in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is 2019. We live in a tech age, and we live in an age where we have to meet people where they are. People are especially young people, are yearning for something authentic, and that's what we got to give them.
Well, I'm not going to have revisionist history, but I will say that during my term of office, I understood that.
Yes, sir.
And I had a very robust summer youth program.
Phenomenal.
And were able to get grants, had a faith-based initiative where I had after-school programs where I could give the various churches a little money that they could hire a teacher, buy food, and so forth. And I'll commend last week. There are some pastors doing some good things. Last week I was at Brian Raines' church. I don't know whether you know Pastor Raines.
We've met.
In other words, he had a church. He took over from his father. His father passed, was a good friend of mine a couple years ago. But he had a basketball camp there He opened his gym last week to kids at a basketball camp. Well, fortunately, he had to put skin in the game, and there wasn't a lot of government support.
Sure.
But he was able to get volunteers to come in and teach these kids from 8 to 18, and I took 2 of my nephews there, and they had a wonderful time.
It's phenomenal.
But most of the churches are locked in the summertime. Here's open. I know that you're new, and you're in school.
We
and
just got our campus. We're 6 months into our campus.
Right.
Well, almost a year at this point.
But I know great things are going to happen there
Sure,
because,
sure.
after all, your church is predominantly African American.
Yes.
And most churches in this community, just as Dr. King said in 1961-62, that the most segregated hour
that's right.
is 11 o'clock Sunday morning.
That's
it's
right.
still 10 or 11 o'clock Sunday morning in this
still
town.
True. It still rings true.
So it's nothing we can do, not too much we can do about that, but minister to the ones that show up or go get the ones that you want to minister to.
Sure. I mean, it's about intentionality, and I commend Pastor Raines, and I commend every other pastor and every other community leader that is looking for ways to open its doors or to open some doors somewhere in order for young people. One thing that you have to understand about young people need recreation. We can't survive without it. We need something to do. That is why in this tech age, we've become inundated and we've become warped in a way by social media, because social media psychologically gives us something to do. We can peek into the lives of other people. We can look at entertainment, right, through social media. It takes up, as a matter of fact, I read a quote that the average individual spends at least 3 hours of the day in total on their phone. They literally, between all the times you pick up your phone and just look at it.
That's not including TV. That's just the phone.
That's just your phone. 3 hours out of the day in total. And so we have that's the kind of culture that we live in. And so we have to be intentional about speaking that language and about using those mediums. But we also have to be intentional about giving young people something to do, giving them an opportunity. I commend you and your administration. Young people, when they get out of school, they want to make money. they want economic opportunities. And so some of the most beneficial programs I've ever been through are programs that taught me what it meant to have money, what it meant to have a bank account, what it meant. These are the kind of things that young people need, and young people need to channel their energy into. And if we don't provide it, who will? And secondly, if we don't provide it, the streets will. The streets will provide a way for them to channel their energy. And so it's imperative for us to find ways, like Pastor Raines and like other pastors, for us to first of all, if we could learn how to pool our resources. We're partnering with New Hope. We're sending a great group of kids, about a dozen from our church and a dozen from New Hope. They're on their way to Branson, Missouri. They're going to a major camp, Kids Across America camp. It's a major Christian camp, and we're partnering with another church to do it. Now, we could have easily said, we're just going to send our kids. They could have easily said, we're just going to send our kids. Why wouldn't we partner up, which could help us both economically? Why wouldn't we partner up and send our kids together? And which would fosters community relationships between two churches, relationships between young people that don't necessarily may not know each other, and relationship between two pastors who are partnering up and can partner up with future ventures with future ventures. What I'm saying is, we got to be intentional. Yeah. We could have done it individually, but we decided to do it collectively because it betters our chances. We need to pool our resources, and we need to be intentional, Doc. We need to be intentional about speaking the language of the young people. And if you aren't listening to a young person, how will you know the language?
That's absolutely true. I'm reminded, I had a $1 million grant from the Justice Department to do youth, into faith-based, and I gave it to the youth. But let me tell you what happened. We took a group of kids to Atlanta. I authorized the chief of police take a group of kids to Atlanta, go to CNN Center, go to Coke, go to Morehouse, go to baseball game, and we spent it. But yet, the Republicans came at me and said, you're spending money unnecessarily. These kids, if they want to go there, their parents should take them. I said, these kids would never get to Atlanta.
Exactly.
Some of these kids.
Exactly.
So I hear you, but we can't listen to what the naysayers said. We have to soldier on. But speaking of race in this town, and churches, black and white, that's basically what we have. We have 2% Hispanics, about 2% Asian. So basically, we're a black and white town.
Right.
Now, Pastor Eddie Smith Sr. started something with his church a few years back with Vineville Baptist, which is a predominantly white congregation, and of course Macedonia, predominantly black congregation. And they used to swap pulpits every now and then, and they would bring their choir. But it was kind of, it wasn't, but now it went away. I noticed last year, one of your fellow Morehouse, Pastor Gooseby, last year, we have two First Baptist churches, as you know. Down there. And they had a big thing on CBS as to how they were coming together, but it happened one or two times. Is it, and I've asked this question of another pastor, what's wrong with having a segregated church if the Word of God is being taught? Does it matter?
To be honest with you, if I can be candid, I don't think it does. I mean, listen, the kingdom is big enough for all of our preferences. It's big enough. If you're white, you want to go to a black church, you can go. If you're black, if you want to go to a white church, you could do that as well. But if you're black and you want to go to a black church and a church that's unapologetically black, or a church that celebrates its blackness, its Africanity, its African heritage, you should be able to do that in comfort. I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I don't think that there should be any the guilt that lies in it. Let's be very clear. The reason why there is a black church is because they want black people in the church. And so black folk didn't want to split from white church. Black folk were forced to split from white church because of the way black folks were treated in white church. Relegated to sitting in the balcony, relegated to having to stand, relegated to not even being able to be included in worship, having to have a minister visit them on whatever plantation they were on. I know I can go into slave history and I don't want to exhaust that, but what I want to make it clear that there's
a good time to talk about it. We're at Juneteenth here.
We are at Juneteenth. And we are celebrating. We're celebrating emancipation. But I want to be very clear that there's a reason why there's a black church. Okay, and so I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think we should be unapologetic about it, and I think that you should be able to worship according to your preference. You should be able to worship according to where you want to worship.
Pastor Stanley and he's sitting right where you're sitting, and he has a big church over there.
Yes, he does. Phenomenal man.
Yes, and he said, well, watch this, Doc. He told me, watch this. He said, sometimes while we can't, he said, majority of white churches in this town will vote Republican, the congregations, and the majority of black congregation will vote Democrat. So in the church house itself, there is not a division per se, but if there's a social active action or a political action committee, which Dr. King, the first thing he put in when he went to Dex Avenue was a political action. He said there would automatically be some built-in conflict of tension because we're on the opposite side. And he's probably right.
I'm sure. I mean, being on opposite sides of the aisle, the way that we look at social programs, the way that we look at the economy, the way that it's a different kind of lens. I mean, there's a different, listen, let's just be clear, there's a different lens from the way that white folk look at things politically than black folk. Now, we do have allies, and you do have individuals who are on the blue side of the aisle in terms of white individuals, but nevertheless, we do look at things. So there would be built in that tension, but I want to take it.
We're about 1 minute.
1 minute. Isn't it interesting that generally when we have those kinds of things, those interfaith or interracial kind of communities, it's generally the black church having to reach out to the white church, or having to contact the white church, the white pastor, and so on and so forth, and having to kind of organize it from that way. Maybe just if we were approached at some junction, that things would maybe be a little bit more efficacious.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking with Pastor J.C. Howard, who is the senior pastor, the pastor of House of Hope Macon, under the leadership of Pastor E. Dewey Smith of Macon Night, a proud Macon Night.
He is.
He's been here about 6 months. He's doing great things at the House of Hope Macon, located at
1909 Woodland Drive. Come see us any Sunday. Sunday 10 a.m., Tuesday at 7 p.m.
We want to thank you. Welcome to Macon. We're glad to have you here.
To have you.
Yes,
thank you, sir.
And keep up the good work.
Doing our best.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And we'd like to thank you all for joining us here on the Middle Georgia Spotlight. Until next week, I'm your host, Jack Ellis. So long, everybody.